Hi everyone, welcome to my coffee talk on free and or low cost resources to build reading and writing skills. Plus, I plan on giving you a few tips and strategies along the way to help you. So let's get started. So first of all, I want to introduce myself. My name is Kendra Price, and I am a homeschool mom. I've been homeschooling since 2013. I also have my website, A Heart for Homeschool, and you can check out my link tree with this QR code to find out where I am on all social media platforms. So here are my wonderful children. I have three girls and one son, ranging in ages from 22 to 13. So my oldest has recently graduated from college. My second oldest is in college now as a sophomore, and my son is 15, and my youngest is 13. Now, the wonderful thing about having four kids that I've homeschooled all of them. I pulled my two oldest out in third grade and fifth grade, and my youngest two have never been in public school. But the interesting thing about homeschooling is that all four of my children are completely different when it comes to reading and writing. So my oldest two daughters love reading, love writing. My oldest is she loves to write as a hobby, write stories, and she's working on her books. My second oldest is good at writing, loves reading classic novels and whatnot. And then I have my two youngest who are resistant readers and writers, meaning that they are they like to do a lot of things. Reading and writing is not always one of them. But the beauty of it is that through experiencing my children uh, have different proclivities towards reading and writing, it has also led me to a lot of different resources to encourage reading and writing in our homeschool. So, why is literacy so crucial nowadays? I've told my kids this. I often quote Frederick Douglass, who has said that once we learn to read, we will be forever free. Reading was so important to our ancestors in terms of um, breaking free from chains, from slavery, but also not being exploited and taken advantage of. But unfortunately, in this day and age, we are back in what is called a silent crisis, where literacy and being able to express ourselves and understand what we read is once again an issue. So I want you to check out this video. Maybe you've seen videos like this on Instagram or Facebook where kids or teens are being asked to read sentences with vocabulary words that we might think are commonplace, but they struggle with. So check this video out.
We were a Sue clothes that were. Who's this for? Extraordinary, but somewhat Gertrude?
Now explain what that means.
I don't know.
She wore a sahalat of clothes that were extraordinary, whatever, bro.
Guys, the kids can't read. Let's talk about it. Yeah.
All right, so I'm not gonna, that's a long video, but it makes the point that things like words like silhouette and extraordinary. Gauche is a little bit of to me, an advanced placement vocabulary word that is not commonplace. But some basic words like extraordinary and even understanding the comprehension of what the sentence means, we have struggles with literacy. It is said that over 50% of adults now have only about a sixth grade reading level. So this is critical. And one of the reasons that we homeschool is because we want our kids to be literate, number one, have strong reading comprehension skills, and be able to articulate their thoughts. But here's the other reason why it is so critical because in this day and age, we see so much of what Frederick Douglass, for example, talked about in terms of freedom, being threatened to be taken away. And so we have to be able to advocate for ourselves, not only verbally, but also in written format as well. And I mean, I just can't even imagine struggling through life not being able to read and comprehend, but that is where we are. So, I want to share with you some resources to promote reading skills. I have some resources that will help you if you are a completely hands-on, every day, sitting down with your child, working with reading comprehension and books and whatnot, but also for those parents who are homeschooling, but they have to work and they need their kids to be able to work independently. I also have some resources that I believe will help you. I know they've helped me because I've been both. I'm able to set aside time often for my kids with things they may be struggling with, but as they get older and I'm working from home, many of the skills and the resources that I need, these have helped me tremendously in working from home. All right, so first up, AI is a controversial topic for many people, but it's a resource we have, and until it's not, but it's a helpful resource in a lot of ways for homeschooling because one of the things that parents first want to look at when it comes to reading are what books to read, right? So we want book lists. We want to try to develop. We don't have to necessarily get a reading curriculum that is bulky, that is expensive, but we want to curate a list of books that we are interested in or we feel like has literary merit for our students to read or our kids to read. So AI is helpful in this because this is showing you just a list I generated just for this presentation from AI that allows me to come up with a list of Black authored books that are at a seventh grade reading level that may want to go through during the year. I also tailored it because I said I wanted some award-winning Black authored children's books. So, for example, what came up, one of my favorites that I've had all of my children read is Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry by Mildred Taylor. But notice that AI was able to create a book list like this, and then all I would have to do is go out and get the books. Um, so ChatGPT, Claude, some of these AI tools, or even a Google search will allow you to find Black authored books, but it goes even beyond that. For example, if you have children that you want to have advanced placement, you want them to read classic books from an advanced placement list or that that touches on various aspects of history, for example. There are book lists out there that, with a simple Google search, will pull those lists up. You can base it on grade, you can base it on age, you can base it on subject. So, if you want science-based books, books that cater to maybe boys, um, if you want basically any kind of reading list you want, you can kind of tailor and craft it to your needs and what you want as a part of your homeschool. Now, when it comes to, I always promote Teachers Pay Teachers because it is just such an excellent resource for low cost and affordable resources that can help in your homeschool. For example, I don't use a quote unquote reading curriculum. I choose books that I want my kids to read, and I can find plenty of resources on Teachers Pay Teachers to supplement it. So, study guides that have questions and not just, basic comprehension questions, but those deeper questions that spark deeper conversations and more critical thought. So you don't have to generate those or come up with those off the cuff all the time. But there are study guides that go chapter by chapter that can help you with that. If you want writing prompts or activities specifically based to a certain book, vocabulary that's tailored just to that book, for example, there are plenty of resources on Teachers Pay Teachers that can help you do that. If you want to also have craft activities or kind of outside of the box, hands-on arts and crafts activities that are associated with the book, a lot of the study guides and resources on Teachers Pay Teachers will allow you to do that. Okay. Now, here's another thing that a lot of people may not be aware of. YouTube has a ton of audiobooks available. So, in this day and age, kids, not only do we have busy schedules, but let's say you have a struggling reader, let's say you work from home, but you want them to be able to go through a chapter or go through chapters in a book, and hear the book or whatnot. Maybe they're an auditory learner. YouTube has audiobooks. One of the things that I've had my youngest do, for example, is I will get the book and I will have her go through and she will listen to the audio book and follow along in her book. And that way she's seeing the words, she's following along, but she's also hearing and listening to the story and to help with context or contextual understanding. So YouTube has several classic books. They have science fiction fantasy books. They have a ton of audiobooks that are free that you don't have to pay for. So I would always start with YouTube and notice that, for instance, here, Wind in the Willows, they have the audiobook chapter by chapter. This is helpful because if you use Google Classroom, I use Google Classroom heavily to keep my kids organized, to send them assignments and whatnot. The audiobook chapter by chapter, the links can be saved as an assignment in Google Classroom. And then during the day when I'm working, she can get her book. She can listen to, let's say I want her to do just chapters 1 and 2. She can read the book, follow along with the audiobook, and it's all in Google Classroom. So, other resources that are very helpful, as I said, Audible, which also has, like, if you sign up for Audible, I think you get one credit per month. So you can use that as a tool for getting like free or low cost audiobooks. Kindle. A lot of the classics are free in Kindle. Libby is also another electronic book resource that's associated with a library where you can check out audiobooks and ebooks on Libby. Um, Podcast. So, I said that YouTube has a lot of audiobooks, but Apple Podcast also has classic stories like Sherlock Holmes, for example, the Sherlock Holmes podcast. They have science fiction fantasy podcasts, things that are stories. So your child is listening to stories. And here's why that's important, because it's not just about having an assignment like you're in school and forcing them to read, but forcing them all, or not forcing them, but also encouraging reading, encouraging the love of storytelling and stories by listening to things that are of interest to them. Because typically, it takes one good book that they really love or one good story that they really love that will spark a love for books. Now, books can be expensive. So, half price books has been phenomenal when it comes to getting a lot of the books that on a book list, as well as, and at this bottom, you see at the park, they will typically have this little free library. And people donate books, put them in the boxes at the library, at the park, and they're free for you to take. You can bring them back or you can keep them. I just gave a crap ton of our books that we no longer have use for or need for. Um, and I filled the little library. This is something that also your kids need to see you take an interest in reading, you take an interest in books. Um, One of the things that has really encouraged my kids to enjoy reading, to love books, is my own love for it. They need to see you reading and enjoying books. So the fact that I make it a priority to check out the little free library if we go to the park or go into the library, and also having books readily available around them. So every room in our house has a bookshelf with books in their bedrooms, in my office, in my bedroom. They see me reading. And here's another huge thing about encouraging a love of reading and a love of books and storytelling are the discussions that happen. We have had some of our best, most deepest discussions while reading books, conversations that we might never have had previously. And so I've learned from my kids, I've learned about my kids as people, and they've learned about me and my thoughts as well, simply from the conversations that we've had reading books together. So, before I jump into that, I want to give you an example. Uh, Before I jump into ReadWorks, I want to give you an example of just how important books are. So, for example, okay, so I'm just going to skip that. All right. So, here is another crucial, critical, I love, absolutely love it, website. It is free. All right, so I love ReadWorks so much that I wanted to kind of show you some of what ReadWorks can do. So if you want your kids to daily have reading assignments, um, to encourage daily reading and practice with reading comprehension, ReadWorks is an excellent resource. So what is ReadWorks? ReadWorks has different articles and stories and whatnot that are age appropriate and from various topics, from science to history to social, like to art. All of these different topics by grade, you can sort them. You have reading passages. You have article a day, which gives them an article to read and practice learning. Read it by reading articles every day. You have all kinds of, you have book studies. There's audio. So if your child, again, struggles with maybe the mechanics of reading, there's audio. So let's just look at this. So if I'm looking at the content type here on the side, but for example, let's say I have a seventh grader, or let's say a ninth grader, because a ninth or tenth grader. Okay. So notice that by grade, there are different articles, books, and whatnot. So, for example, Born a Crime, that's a book study. Um, or of Mice and Men is another book study. So there are articles and whatnot associated that you can read from that. Notice that this is a passage, okay? This is a passage from Trevor Noah's book called Born a Crime. Notice that there's the reading passage here. You can also listen to the audio here. And then there's also vocabulary activities. So before they start reading, like vocabulary words, how familiar are you with the word recognition or vibrant? Okay. Then, for example, there are questions. So after they read the passage and do the vocabulary activity, there are questions that they can answer based upon the reading. Okay. Not all of the articles have question sets associated with them, but there are some. We can also, let's see. So again, say for a seventh grader, the Trail of Tears and the Choctaw Resistance to Removal. It has again the article that they can read, the vocabulary on here as that they can listen to how it's pronounced and whatnot, and also a question set. Notice the information or the details that this article gives you. It gives you the reading level, how many words, the vocabulary associated with the passage. Okay. You can print this article if you would prefer, but you can also assign it in Google Classroom. So, for example, let's say I wanted my son to read this, although this is below his reading grade and whatnot. But essentially, it will allow you to assign it to him and it'll show up in Google Classroom. Okay. So, notice that this is from kindergarten through high school. There are life science, all different types of articles, and you can sort through them, you can save them, and you can assign them in Google Classroom. And this is important, or this is helpful, because what it does is every day they're practicing reading, not just the mechanics of reading, but also practicing reading comprehension. You are also able, as a parent, to see what their current assignments are that you've assigned them to in Google Classroom, and what their future or past assignments are. So, because we're on summer break, I didn't have any current or future assignments, but you can see where I have or they have completed daily assignments and submitted them. And then I can go and look and see what answers they got correct and what answers they got wrong. For example, if I assign something and they did not submit it, I can see that and I can tell them, hey, you need to do this. Okay. And this is, I have two kids, so I have two different Google Classroom assignments. So, ReadWorks is excellent. All of this is free. Um, it allows you to track your child's progress and it allows you to see what your kids are doing and choosing age appropriate based on their reading comprehension skills and whatnot. Assign them topics, maybe what you think they're interested in. Okay. So now that we've looked at ReadWorks and what an awesome free resource this is for kids to um, read every day, practice reading comprehension and vocabulary skills every day, my last reading resource is Quizlet. This is another free resource, but in terms of practicing vocabulary, Quizlet is excellent because, for example, I typically have used Wordly Wise 3000 for years now to build my kids' vocabulary. I feel like the book is about 18 or $20. It allows them to build vocabulary that they'll see on standardized testing like the ACT and the SAT. And it helps them not only to, be familiar with the vocabulary words, um, and know how to use it in context, read and understand the words in context. But Quizlet, you can, for all of the Wordly Wise 3000 vocabulary books, you can find those vocabulary lists. They're already in Quizlet. You can look them up based on what lesson your child is on. And it's basically digital flashcards. They can practice. There's practice tests and other activities to engage them with Quizlet or with their vocabulary words. And again, Quizlet is something that those vocabulary lists and words can be assigned in Google Classroom so that Google Classroom becomes kind of a one-stop shop where your kids are not having to navigate all of these different websites themselves, but reading and writing are like hand in glove. So now I'm going to talk about some resources and tips to promote writing skills. The first thing I'm going to say is I am a writing coach for Brave Writer, www.bravewriter.com. It is a mind-blowing, revolutionary, in my mind, way of looking at writing. So I invite you to watch this video on YouTube by Julie Bogart, who is the founder of BraveWriter.com. And hear what she has to say in terms of the natural stages of writing. Julie Bogart wrote a book called Help My Kid Hates Writing, and in that book, it captures a lot of some of the core ideas behind Brave Writer philosophy, and I'm just capturing a few of those for you, but I strongly encourage you to read this book. It's a easy read, but it's so insightful because I think once parents change their mind about what writing is and whatnot, it really can help your kids. I don't have a whole lot of writing resources, but I can say that there are a few things that I feel like has been really effective with my kids, especially my reluctant writers, when it comes to writing. First, copy work. So when they're younger in elementary age, getting their writing stamina up with the pencil and pen and whatnot, getting them to see what looks right. What does correct or right, good writing looks like by copying passages. Maybe it's a passage from a book. Maybe it's a passage from the Bible if you want to have them do copy work with that. But copy work plays a role in building up their ability to write for a longer period of time, knowing what correct grammar and punctuation and whatnot looks like. The Fix It Grammar series is another resource that when it comes to practice, daily practice, um, when my kids were younger and I would say like up to early middle school, Fix It Grammar was really effective. Every day it's a workbook, but basically there's a story, and every day they learn grammar by addressing aspects of this story, being able to identify what is wrong and correcting it every day. And in that, through that, they are able to practice, like what is a noun, identifying the nouns in the sentences, identifying the verbs, identifying the linking verbs, identifying the subject and the predicate. Um, so the Fix It Grammar series is excellent with that. And it is something that once they are able to once they get into it, they can do it independently. Okay. And they can correct it independently and really get there. My youngest two really thrived with that Fix It Grammar series. Incorporating writing and revision into responses to books. So, study guides. A lot of times we would have conversations about the books where they're expressing their thoughts. I would have my kids to write their thoughts down in response to some of the questions I had. And then once they have written it down, because they may have a lot to say based on our conversation, then go back and revise it. Revise what you've said so that it is grammatically correct or correct in terms of content. But then I'm linking it or incorporating that into a book study that we're doing. Okay. So it's not just grammar for grammar's sakes. It's not just content for content's sake. It is connected to whatever book we're reading. Again, I can't say enough good things about Brave Writer in terms of inspiring critical thinking, but also these classes for Brave Writer are online, they're asynchronous, meaning that there's not a specific time your child has to get on the computer. They're not live classes, but they submit their work um, through the Brave Writer platform. But here's the thing I love. This is what I want to say. This is the thing that I love about the classes. They're asynchronous. They give kids the opportunity to receive constructive feedback on their writing. You can, like our Brave Writer 101 class, parents can partner with their kids to learn how to empower their kids with writing, but also Brave Writer really expands the idea about the types of writing. You know, a lot of times as parents, we just want them to be able to write an essay, and that's great. Or we want to be able to write maybe a cute little story. But there are so many different aspects of writing that we don't consider. Science, writing for science, storytelling, yes, Greek mythology. But here's another thing. Even with essay writing, we don't often have our kids read essays. What is a good essay? You know, what makes an essay good? What techniques does an author or a writer use to draw their reader in, to engage their audience? These are things that get addressed in the Brave Writer classes and exposes kids to a variety of different types of writing, not just academic writing, but also in terms of academic writing, expanding their understanding of even what is good writing and what are techniques from other good writers that they. Lastly, I want to share that there are, a lot of times parents are like, oh, I don't know, you know, even maybe what to assign. You may not know what to assign your kids with writing. One of the things that I've also found to be helpful is Pinterest. Pinterest has a ton of writing prompts and questions from little kids all the way to teens. You can save it on a board and just pull it out. Journaling, while effective, like journaling is something that not every child likes, but here's something that I found that was very helpful and effective. You know, we talk about having pen pals. That was like old school where our kids write a letter to their pen pal and send it off somewhere, and then they receive a letter back. One of the things that I did with my kids, my younger two, is I maybe let's say I would start off by asking them a question about something that they're interested in because writing, a lot of times kids can effectively write when it's something that they care about or that they're interested in. And that's a great starting point for inspiring kids into writing. Maybe I ask them something about themselves or something about something that they're interested in, and they may write that in a journal, but then I would write them back. So I would share things in writing with them based on what we're talking about. So it's kind of like you as a parent being a pen pal with your child. And the reason why that's helpful is number one, it shows your interest in what they have to say. It helps to develop their writing voice. They also see what correct writing is from you. But it also creates dialogue between the two of you that where it's not just a writing assignment, but you're learning from each other and about each other. So those are some things that have been effective for me, some things that I feel like can be effective and are effective for a lot of students. So I want to thank you for listening, and hopefully some of the resources that I've shared and the tools that I've shared with you um, can help you to develop your children in reading, writing, and reading comprehension. Please feel free to visit me at aheartforhomeschool.com or check me out on bravewriter.com because I'm a writing coach. Thanks.